Thank you for joining me today. I have what I feel is an incredible guest with us today. And I know I say that pretty much about all my guests, and I keep telling you that. But truly, I think you're going to find that his story is quite inspiring. And I think for those of you who may find that you're connecting with his story, that you are finding that which you need in this story, stay with it. And he'll give you all his information at the end so that you can get in touch with him. His name is Dustin Meza. And Dustin, I've actually never met Dustin. We've met online. I found out about Dustin through his partner. And she told me his story a few years ago. And Dustin, on and off, stayed on my mind. I think most of you know that I'm all about kind of seeing the trajectory that somebody takes in their healing. It's really important for me to find people that can inspire us, but also if I can help them, right? Well, in this case, I couldn't help him, but he surely inspired me. And so here we are, like 3 years later. I got in touch with Dustin, and Dustin was so nice and so willing to talk to me and to talk to us and share what he's doing and share his story with us, or his story of healing. I am not going to tell you more. I'll let Dustin share with us his story. And let me put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing and bring Dustin with us. Okay.
All right. Hi, Margie. Can you hear me okay?
I can. This is Dustin Meza. And I'm going to let him just share with us his story because it's pretty incredible and it's really beautiful. So Dustin, I'm just going to set the stage. You're in Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken, a beautiful setting. And something happened to you. And can you share with us what happened and how it happened? And we'll go on from there, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
With us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for setting such a wonderful stage and inviting me here to your show. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story and maybe some of the insights into the realms of healing that I've been able to discover on this incredible expedition, if you will, an expedition of the soul. And so, yes, my story starts here in Hawaii on the Big Island. And back in the very beginning, early stages, in fact, I just had my 10-year reunion because it was here in January that I went to the southeastern shores of the Big Island, and I kind of put myself out there asking, a higher power if they could help set me on a path that would allow me to not only dive deeper into the healing practices that my teachers to that point had already shared with me, but if there was a way that they could help put me on a path that would connect me with other teachers that would allow me to learn even further. And then let's go a next step. If this greater higher power could set me on a trajectory that would allow me to then share these insights with the people, because it's fine that you want to go on your own healing journey, but it's super fine that you want to help other people on their journey. And so I was really excited about that. And so I went there to the southeastern corner of the island where the volcano goddess Pele resides, and I put myself out there, full heart, full soul, and just kind of made an intention through this ceremony. And 3 short days later, I had gone to Tai Chi class, which I did every Tuesday and Thursday. I went to go meet with my teacher at that time. And after we got done with our practice, I went to my kind of day job, if you will, my self-appointed day job, where I went around and I would help local homestead owners with their coconut palms, and I would trim the trees, hook them up with coconuts, and I just kind of do my part in that way. Well, I had gone after practice. I went to a house that I had already made my way in their trees. We had trimmed the tree next to the one that I was working on this particular day. We had trimmed that one last week, so I was coming back to finish the job. This was probably one of the higher trees that I had worked on. And I'm a free climber, free diver. I like to do things on my own. But this particular day, I did have a rope harness attached to me. However, at the particular time, the harness was not in full use. I made my way up the tree and was taking a breath, a bit of a break, when a whisper in the wind came to me and just said, "You're going to fall now, but it's okay. It's okay." And in that moment, my body wanted to cling for safety, but everything else about me suddenly found its way just falling out of the tree. Now, I didn't slip. The branch didn't break. I was resting on one of the palm fronds inside of the canopy, so I should not have fallen. I was in what we would consider a safe place inside of a coconut palm. But lo and behold, I found myself at the bottom of this tree, and my body was shattered, elbows broken, chest broken, back broken, legs broken, and I knew instantly that I was paralyzed. I knew instantly that my life was never going to be the same. As I tried to turn my body over, because I was laying on my back, it's like, man, I'm so uncomfortable. Everything hurts. I just wanted to roll over and try to get up, try to shake it off, as I've been taught my whole life. And I couldn't. I could barely move my torso, and my arms would only move at the shoulders. I couldn't get anything. My elbows wouldn't extend. I couldn't squeeze my wrists or my fists, and my legs wouldn't turn. And I just had this impending knowingness that I was paralyzed. Now, you don't have any preliminary understanding of what that should feel like, but I just knew. I was like, I'm paralyzed. I've had plenty of broken bones in the past, but this didn't feel like that, because there was this unendingly loud and excruciating pain that was happening in my torso above the level of my injury. And everything below my waist seemed like everything was fine. Seemingly, I didn't have any pain. Nothing seemed to be giving me a signal of uncomfortability. It was just this thing that I couldn't move it. But I knew I was paralyzed. And between this duality of extreme pain and this kind of subtle peacefulness of lifelessness, I was stuck there, kind of in and out of worlds, both with the loudness and then being present with that silence. But in the space between, in that gap, I heard that voice come back to me, and it just affirmed, "You're paralyzed, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And so, throughout the whole journey of, medics coming and flying over in a helicopter and being in ICU and the whole thing, I never went down this path of being scared, because I had this sense from the very beginning that there's a greater purpose here. And even better is that there's someone or something that is right there beside me, helping guide this seemingly catastrophic experience. And I just felt so peaceful with it. I felt so in absolute harmony, because I was willing to accept the fact that there was something greater taking place here. I often say, and I often feel, that when when we're putting ourselves out there and we're trying our best and we're moving in a way that seems like we're in this kind of controlled space, right? We're like, I've got my strategy and I'm actualizing and engaging with my strategy. But then this completely random thing takes place. I always try my best to go into the mindset that, okay, what is it that spirit is trying to tell me here? Spirit has obviously taken over because I have no control over this situation other than to let go, other than to surrender, and other than to stay present. And so that was kind of the name of the game. And, the path of a yogi, or, in my case, I was more focused on martial arts. So in the case of both, as a yogic practitioner and a martial artist, that the practice starts and ends with the breath. And when you don't have access to your body, because I was fully in cast, my arms are casted, my chest is casted, my back is casted, my legs are casted, I can't hardly do anything. I could turn my neck, I could blink my eyes, and I could breathe. And, even the autonomic functions of using the bathroom, of, having a bowel movement or peeing, those were all just happening at their free will. I didn't have any control over my body other than very limited blinking, swallowing, food, turning my neck and breathing.
Could you speak?
I could speak, but it was very difficult. It hurt. I had a tube in my throat. It really, really was uncomfortable to speak. So mostly I did not speak. Okay. For the first little bit, and maybe a couple of days, maybe even a week in, I was having real difficulty communicating. I would write using my shoulder. They would put a pen in my, the jankiness of my fingers. That I would use my shoulder to write. Notating at the shoulder level. But most of all I wanted to do was roll over from one side to the other, and that was it. But I knew that this was for purpose. I knew that this was the answer, even though it wasn't the form that I thought it was going to be in. I knew deep within me that the experience, the radicalness of this experience was really just the answering of my deep, heartfelt intentions. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's like that with anything, right? It's what we're attracting to us. And I apparently was attracting the opportunity to heal. I was putting myself out there to be a healer and to help heal the people. But you can't be a healer unless you're healing yourself. This is something I discovered. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so, okay, I guess if I'm going to take a practice with me to the people, or practice through me to the people, then it has to come through me. It has to make that transition. And that's where
your experience.
Yeah, it has to go through a medium, mm-hmm. right? From the non-physical into the physical. And so I was that vehicle, if you will. And so my body's there, it's shattered. All the natural functions are essentially taken away from me, except for the ability to do the bare minimum. Swallow my food and water and breathe. Two most basic functions. And so from that space of just being able to breathe, I returned to the practice. I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to heal, then I need to put the practices that I've learned and that my teachers have shared with me into use. And a lot of that was this kind of Taoist internal alchemy. Mm-hmm. And again, yeah, it just starts with the breath. And so my body being there, casted in ICU, I returned to the breath. And I focused on bringing my mind and the breath to this level of the dantian, the level of the lower abdomen. And I began the process of cultivating Qi. And gradually, in the ways that my teachers shared, this chi began to grow from a little tiny pea-sized ball of light to being able to, oh, now it's got a sensation attached to it instead of just this illuminary essence, instead of just this, an essence of my mind, so to speak. And gradually, I started to feel, even though I couldn't feel in that section of my body, I didn't have a sensation to touch or to pain in anything below my navel. So to feel something in that space that was below my navel, I thought, wow, look at that. Look at that. There's life after or beyond the physical. And I began to put all of my efforts into cultivating this life force or this vitality. And as this ball of light began to grow, it began to kind of push on the boundaries of my body. And I could feel this pleasurable sensation reaching the layer of my skin in my upper body. Started to reach into my torso and through the layers of my skin, and the little tiny hairs on my arms and on my body would start to kind of stand up as the chi pushed through the layers of my skin, making its way from deep inside to a more physical, presence. And gradually, I began to use these internal practices and my mind to push that energy into the different areas of my body, particularly into my spine. I figured, yes, I want to get the chi into my legs, but the chi will go there automatically if I could reestablish the circuitry, right? So I began to visualize my spine rebuilding itself, putting all the pieces of the bone back together. And once I kind of had a sense, okay, I've put the Legos together. Now I got to turn the circuit back on. And so I began to try to bring that energy and kind of illuminate my spine. And gradually bringing that energy up and down the spine until I could feel these branches moving out from the spine and across my belly and down into my hips and up into my torso and arms. And that it kind of branched all the way down my feet. And suddenly my feet are tingling. I'm like, well, I can't feel if somebody is punching or squeezing or scratching my feet. I can't feel that. But I can feel this aliveness percolating at my toes. I can feel this aliveness bubbling at the bottom of my feet. And so, with my mind and my intention and my breath, I tried to build the sensation until it could permeate all of my body without any gaps in that matrix. And gradually, one night, my leg suddenly held itself up. All of a sudden I got a nerve response. Sorry. I got a nerve response and my leg started to kind of twitch midair. The nurse, I was getting a sponge bath and the nurse had my leg up and she's like, can you hold it there? And every night it would just flop, right? But this particular night it held and it was just enough. And then it collapsed again, of course. But I figured if I could get one nerve synapses to fire, I can do it again. And I could duplicate this effort, right? And so that became the game. Now that I was feeling this energy throughout my body, now I had to get it to be integral enough to hold a physical matter. And gradually, this did begin to happen. And the process of standing up could begin. And of course it starts by, okay, well, we're just going to lean you up at a 45-degree angle in a bed. How long can you stay there? Okay, well, now we're going to try to transfer you into a wheelchair. And the first time they put me in a wheelchair, I nearly passed out. It was so excruciatingly painful. And I think I made it maybe a minute in time before I felt like, oh my God, my whole system is going to black out right now. Because it was just so painful to have the vertebra So I shattered 3 vertebrae, but 2 of them were stacked right on top of each other. So they had to fuse 1 vertebra above and 1 vertebra below. So essentially 4 vertebrae together fused right on top of each other. Well, the 2 that were shattered were having a really hard time coming to an upright position. It was very, very precarious sensation inside of me. I just felt like I was going to, like a tower of Jenga, just fall over. But I didn't. They set me back down, and the next day, maybe I got a minute and a half, and then I got 2 minutes. And after maybe a week, I got up to 10 minutes before that feeling of needing to black out would take over. Well, you just keep pushing that boundary of what's possible. And before you know it, I'm wheeling myself up and down the halls of the hospital, just trying to get some blood circulation, trying to have some fun in my new environment, trying to just not be bored sitting there in the hospital for a month, 2 months at a time.
So at this point, then your arms are working, right? So
I was still casted,
okay.
But I could maneuver enough with my shoulders.
Got it. Okay.
Right. And so after a month in ICU, I got relocated to Rehab of the Pacific, which was an inpatient rehab center. And at this place, I started because my body was coming back on and I was getting some more energy. And, while I was in ICU, I would, to go back a little bit, I was still connecting with my teacher at the time. This was before he had passed. And my teacher was sharing some emails with me, was sending me practices for me to do while I was in ICU. So I do these practices, and one of the other students was going through her Chinese medicine school. So she was sending me medicines for me to utilize as well. And she's like, I got a lot of these medicines from this book called A Tooth from the Tiger's Mouth. And it's all about this Chinese sports medicine used, this medicine that was used on ancient warriors back in, feudal China. And so she's sharing these poultices and plasters and liniments with me, and against the doctors and the nursing staff recommendation, I would have them take my bandages off and soak the gauze in these liniments and put these plasters on my body and massage this ointment into my skin at the injury sites. And they were 100% not okay with it, but I was very insistent. And I said, hey, if I get infected, if I have any side effects or complications, I take full responsibility and I will not blame you at all. But please, if you could do this, that would be super helpful for me. And they did. And in between, the therapies, I would douse my elbows and I'd be sitting there in bowls of liniments and just, eat my sandwich while I'm sitting in a bowl, with my elbows in the ointments. And, and then I'm in Rehab of the Pacific, and I'm still doing this. And now I'm starting to alkalize my body, and I'm looking at my nutrition plan, and I'm really trying to look at all these different layers of the human anatomy so that I could kind of formulate a game plan. Because one thing with spinal cord injury is you affect all of these different levels, right? Your respiratory system is compromised. Your cardiovascular system's compromised. Your nervous system is compromised. Your urogenital system's compromised. Your skin and flesh, all of the tissues are compromised, from the hardest, bones to the softest of tissues, your tendons, ligaments, everything has an opportunity to experience healing. And so when I was looking at how can I heal from this incredible injury, I had to start to break down these different levels of the human anatomy, because I knew it was more than just flesh and bones, right? And so what I came to distill is that there are 7 main areas of our human anatomy that are essential to recognize and to connect with and engage with if we're going to make the type of healing momentum that we really are wanting to make. And I kind of broke those down as the electromagnetic, the psycho-spiritual, biochemical, and being. So the electromagnetic, psycho-spiritual, biochemical, being. Looking at each one of these different layers, I could then quantify or subcategorize even further. Okay, well, what is the electric system comprised of? Right? You got the meridian systems, you got chakras, you got nerves. And so I just kind of went down each different layer and I looked at all of the subcategories that are affected by this one particular, component, main area. And then what do they need to feel nourished? What do they need in order to thrive? And I started looking at my vitality practice or my healing practice as a practice of engaging and nourishing these different layers. And so maybe for the electric system, I started looking at acupuncture and meditation and how can I enliven and bring my Qi body and my meridian body. How can I get my meridian system to allow the Qi to flow more smoothly with less restriction? How can I get my psyche to let go of the trauma that is keeping my body locked in pain and locked in its trauma, right? And so I started to really dive deep into these different layers, and it takes a radical amount of honesty, particularly when we get to our psyche, right? Yeah. As psyche and actually our nutrition plan. It's really easy to go into the realm of pleasure when you're looking at your nutrition and dietary, system or practice.
Yeah, you're talking about a holistic approach, and holistic with a W. Because
yeah.
Whole, right? I mean, It wasn't just one aspect. You literally took the whole and broke it down.
Yes.
What different aspects you could approach and how to approach them.
Yeah. And in which ways are they locked up with trauma?
Right.
And in which ways are they in desperate need of nourishment? Mm-hmm. And the process is a never-ending thing because we're constantly making shifts, especially with our activity and our dietary practice. Mm-hmm. But maybe that's why they call it a practice, is because you have to be a little diligent with it. Yeah. And it's not easy. It's not easy. Distraction is everywhere. Mm-hmm. And we're human. We don't always want to get up in the morning and do the thing. But
that's what it takes.
Yeah, that's what it takes. Yeah. And so it really became, the process of healing really became a practice of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so it took me some time to really integrate healing, which now I just see it as I'm just living my life, right? But before I had to integrate. I had to say, no, this isn't actually this particular thing that I'm doing or ingesting or consuming isn't taking me where I need to go. It's not assisting my process. And so as much as I love this thing, say, called coffee, it is frying my nervous system. And it's giving me symptoms of being paralyzed. It's giving me symptoms of maybe a backed up bowel syndrome or system. Maybe it's frying my nervous system so that my circuitry isn't firing at the level that I want. Maybe I'm getting a value in one way because my mental faculties are firing really well, but physically it's deteriorating my nervous system. I started noticing that, functions would be limited later in the day if I consumed coffee. And if I consumed, sugars or, whatever it was, I started recognizing that there is a cost for everything.
So you were listening, Dustin. You were listening to your body. You were into what was happening. the body was talking to you, basically.
It's always talking to us. It is, that's one of the beautiful things in having an injury is I believe that injuries are nature's way of bringing us to stillness. And that stillness is an opportunity to listen, because stillness and silence tend to go hand in hand, right? And so the injury led me to stillness, which gave me an opportunity to sit in that silence. And in that silence, it's actually not silence at all. There is profound wisdom in that space when we can get beyond, you know, the antics of our ego and the distractions of our mind. When we can get past that, get past the traumas of yesterday, we find that there is a gap that we can rest in. And in that gap, all the answers can unfold to us. So yeah, the injury brought me to stillness, and that stillness led me into silence, and that silence led me to listening. And that listening has all of the wisdom that I needed in order to make steady, gradual progress. And I wasn't looking for an overnight miracle. I wasn't looking for a pill that could make it all better, or an exoskeleton that would suddenly allow me to walk. I knew that this was a process. And the process was me listening, taking the time to integrate that wisdom, and staying consistent with that. And if I can do that enough, then a metamorphosis and a transmutation will take place. But I have to be willing to listen with radical honesty. Mm-hmm. And that isn't easy. It's not easy to hear that you've been living out of alignment for so long. It's not easy to hear that you've been kind of wrapped up in this way of thinking, and that way of thinking is keeping you injured. You know, I talk with a lot of folks that have spinal cord injury, and one of the things that I'm excited about as a coach to help them with is helping them recognize that actually your body has done so much healing, but you are stuck. You as a person, you as a thinking being have kept yourself hindered. And the reason why is because there's perks of being injured.
Right.
There's perks. And some of those perks aren't as readily available as we would think that we would see them. You know, it's not as obvious as you would think. But sometimes being injured gives you that sense of somebody's caring about me. Mm-hmm. And maybe you just have this psychosomatic response that keeps you chicken winged, so to speak, so that you will continuously get this feedback from your external environment that you're loved and you're cared, instead of coming inside and discovering that you're already loved, right, that you stem from love, that you have so much love radiating inside of you that you don't need it to come from anybody else because you're beaming it already. And if it comes back to you, wonderful. And if it doesn't, wonderful. But it doesn't matter because your cup's so full of love already that you're fulfilled. Yeah.
You're whole.
You're whole.
Yeah.
And so it's not easy to recognize that you are your greatest adversary in your healing journey. It's not easy to take that unrelenting accountability where no matter what has happened before you and what's going to continue to happen before you, you stay at the forefront of accountability and filling yourself up from the inside. And so what I find as a coach when I work with folks is that they've got good circulation. Their body is giving them a type of response. Sometimes it feels like pain, but it's like, okay, Well, that pain is your body actually turning back on. It's saying, I don't know what is going on, even though the wind is blowing or a piece of grass is touching your skin. I don't know that that's not fire. So I'm going to give you an alert system that says, hey, I need you to check this out just to make sure that this organism is okay. Right. But we need to be in gratitude for that because, hey, you got a soldier down there, a little nerve response that's saying, hey, guys, I don't know what this is, but I need you to check it out. But we hold ourselves back. We say, no, that's bad. That's a bad response. It's painful. I need to drown that response out. I need to drown that signal out with alcohol, with medications, with, an unending supply of people around me that will cater to me because I have this sense of pain. And it's an incredible experience to watch somebody who finally is able to get beyond that psychic grip where they can finally recognize, oh yeah, I guess my body does have good circulation. I guess my body is giving me a feedback mechanism. And I am able to perform in certain ways. And if I just XYZ, if I just let my mind let go of this story that I've been holding on to for so long, if I could just get beyond that psyche and move into this space of the spirit where there's courage, venturing into this unknown territory, where there's a type of, accountability and awareness and acceptance and compassion for what we've been through. When we move into that realm of the spirit, it's amazing what happens when the psyche is suddenly not part of that, situation anymore. You move beyond it and you're like, oh, wow, I am suddenly doing today what I could not do yesterday because my mind has shifted. And it's a radical thing to watch somebody go through that process. And I've been super fortunate.
That word shifted is so essential, right? There needs to be a shift.
Yeah.
A little shift every day, a little shift from moment to moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We find with spinal cord injury how interconnected everything really is, how essential your biochemistry is. We find how essential your nervous system, your mind-body connection is. A lot of folks come to me and they're like, Dustin, I've been going through this thing for so long and my body just isn't healing. And so I'll walk them through these 7 different layers of the human anatomy. And I say, okay, well, what are we doing for our electric system? Have you been activating your meridian system? Are you activating the nerves in these different areas of your body? Well, no. Okay, well, let's do that. And then like, okay, well, how's your magnetic system? What are you moving towards in your life? What are you attracting? Well, what does that even mean? And so we look at, kind of the language they use and the things that they focus on. And you're like, well, you're not focusing on healing. You're focusing on all these things that you're injured or that you're limited by.
Right.
And so we set them on a trajectory of healing. We set their internal compass into a space where they can start gravitating and moving into a reality that is inclusive of healing.
And the possibility of healing.
Totally.
Because I love that the part that you talked about of your visualizations. It's so important that we can visualize and understand that there is that possibility.
100%. When I was in rehab of the Pacific and I got access to my wheels, I was wheeling around. I found in one of the conference rooms where we would have our group therapy sessions where everybody could kind of essentially complain about what they're going through, which I found to just be a group exercise where people would hold themselves in a group consciousness of being injured. Mm-hmm. It wasn't guiding us out of healing. It was keeping us in it being injured. But what I did find valuable is, one, it allowed me to understand the patterns of the mind that as a collective we are holding, as an injured collective we hold. and we grasp onto, not only are we holding, but we're grasping onto it for some reason. Maybe because it allows us to feel different. Maybe it allows us to feel special. Maybe it allows us certain, like we said, certain levels of care that we maybe felt we weren't getting in some other previous reality. Mm-hmm. But I found a stack of magazines, and they were like the stack of Sports Illustrated. And I started to go through this stack of athletes that were using their body in the ways that they wanted to use them. And I started cutting out and ripping out little images. And I had my girlfriend at the time get me a big poster board, and we started gluing on these images of what I wanted my body to move into. I knew that any injury, it has a peak, right? Where suddenly I'm at the height of that injury. It just happened. Trauma is in its greatest capacity. Well, after that, there's a trajectory like you were talking about. And that trajectory is 100% determined on the conditions that we put on the organism. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that spinal cord injury wasn't the end. This was just a pivot point for me to kind of dig in to one way or another. It was a fork in the road. Mm-hmm. And for me, I wanted my fork to take me to a place that had really fine dining, if you will. Mm-hmm. And what that meant to me was a life that made me feel excited and possible and vital. And these Sports Illustrated images were able to help capture some of those sentiments. And so I put that at the foot of my bed there in the hospital, so that all day long, when I wasn't, visiting with the doctor, I wasn't in the PT rooms. Forgive me, my dog may bark right now, so we may have to cut this out. Just had somebody show up. I apologize. Rooney, come. It could get really chaotic real quick. We'll just cut that out.
Okay.
So I wanted to be able to visualize any point of the day as often as possible. And it just wasn't about seeing these images. It was about feeling them. It was about bringing all of my being into this experience. Remember, being is that the last, biochemical being. And so I had to kind of go there in my presence in order for my body to know that it could follow in suit. And
a sort of visual affirmation, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Visualizing and kind of experiencing,
Well, and experience. It's very important for us to experience. It's not enough to have it in the mind's eye. The body needs to be engaged.
Correct. And so with the breath, I would kind of breathe athleticism back into my body. I would breathe what it was like playing basketball again, or running on grass, or just using my body in these different ways. And then I would go down into the kind of like the courtyard every morning. First thing, sun's coming up, before breakfast is being served, before they brought the tea in the morning, before therapy would start, I would wheel myself down into this courtyard where the sun shined right into the grassy area. And from that space, I would just sit there and I would kind of visualize, and in the minimal way that I could with my body at that time, I would do my Tai Chi, right? My teacher had taught me Tai Chi, so I started to do what I could. I'd take my arm braces off and I'd try to just, as little as I could, or as much as I could, even though it was a little, I would do my practice. My body couldn't do that much, but my mind remembered all the postures. Mm-hmm. And so even though my body could maybe just move a few inches this way and that, in my mind, I was standing and I was animating with full, choreography.
Yeah.
And my legs would do this little twitch thing, or my toes would move, or suddenly, like, I'd stretch just a little bit more than I thought I could, because I was trying to embody this internal posture that I was visualizing. And then I get released from ICU. I get released from rehab of the hospital, rehab of the Pacific, the rehab hospital, and I'm released back into my own home care. And the first thing I wanted to do was I needed to head to the beach, and we took my walker. I was just barely able to use the walker, and so I wheeled my wheelchair to the edge of the sand, and then with the help of my sweetheart at the time, I'm being kind of suspended by my britches while we're making our way down over the sand dune and into the water. And, all these onlookers looking at us like, oh Lord, like, look at this guy. He could barely hold himself upright, but he's just going out there into the surf, just getting blasted by waves. And finally a wave took me, and I was able to just completely surrender and just let myself go. And it was the first time that in the history of having this injury that I felt like, okay, now I can really start making some progress. I just felt like finally I got my body back in my own hands, because I wasn't confined to the shell of the hospital and what it was that the doctors were trying to have me do. And from that moment on, I leaned 100% onto the practices that my previous teachers had shared with me. And so,
which is martial arts, correct?
Which was martial arts, and also this kind of Tao Yin yoga. It was this internal alchemy, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so, without spending so much of my time squeezing little gadgets or trying to use these cable machines or doing whatever, things that the therapists were having me do, now I was like, okay, now I can really practice. And so I get down there on the fuzzy carpet, and I start holding these yogic postures and doing these static holds while using my visualization practices to bring the life force throughout my body. And, at first I couldn't hardly do anything, and my body's shaking, and it was really irritating, because you're used to doing something with your body so proficiently. I've been an athlete my entire life. I can make my body do anything I wanted it to do. And now I can't do anything I want to do. So, of course it's humbling, but as an athlete, it's also like, well, if this is my arena, then this is the most challenging arena I've ever been in. And I have to be, if I'm going to continue to call myself an athlete or a yogi or a martial artist, then I need to step up to the new level of gauntlet, the new arena that I've been presented with, right? The ultimate test isn't the arena that's outside of you. It's the arena that is you. Mm-hmm. And so I dove into that, and it was irritating and frustrating and aggravating, but I was excited to do it.
How long did it take you, Dustin? And I guess how long is the wrong question. I know it was a process, and the description of this process, and I don't mean to interrupt, we're running out of time, and I want to make sure that everybody's really clear that it wasn't just from one day to the next. It was grit.
Yeah.
It was hard work. It was faith in the ability to do this. I mean, there's just so many factors that go into what you have been doing or what you did and continue to do, I'm sure, for other people. Yeah. But one thing evolved into the next, right? And I know your story a little bit, so to me, it's fascinating because I know that windows just opened, doors opened, and you were open for those to be open.
Well, in a sense, yeah. So if I can, real quick. So yeah. The arena. I got released from the hospitals and returned to my home here on Big Island, which at the time I was 3 miles deep and 2,000 feet down a 4x4 road. And the last house at the back of this jungle valley. I mean, it was an intense journey to get down there.
Yeah, that part of the island is just beautiful, but so thick in vegetation.
And rugged. And
Right.
I mean, we're talking a pretty steep descent into this jungle valley. I mean, it's a white knuckle experience getting down into there. And so I was released to this cabin that was completely off grid, no electricity, no running water. You know, you wash your dishes in the river kind of thing. And I was essentially confined to the cabin in my wheelchair and walker. Now I could use the wheelchair and get around well, but there's only so much, flat area inside the cabin that I could use. And so I was forced to take the next steps into my walker in order to traverse new territory, in order to make my way around the grassy area outside. And so, like you said, it was a step-by-step gradual thing. I had to learn how to be on the ground and learn how to roll with proficiency, roll over from back to belly, and animate just on the ground level before I could make my way to even just sitting upright and stretching and doing that sort of thing before I could even make my way into the next phase of crawling around to do things. But what I wanted to do was walk, and I wanted to walk more than anything. And so one of the things that I was like, well, I don't want to be in that chair. I know that the more time I spend in the chair, the more I'm going to spend in that chair. Mm-hmm. So I, at all costs, tried not to use my wheelchair at all. And I tried not to use my walker at all. So that meant crawling around like an infant would, making my way over to a wall and crawling up the wall and using every bit of function that I could in order to do things, in order to get a glass of water, in order to get a bowl of cereal or whatever it was. I had to force myself to do things, because if not, I wouldn't be able to do things.
Right.
And so my experience went from only being able to be inside that tiny little cabin to then being able to use the walkway outside of the cabin, which was a very short walkway, to being able to use my walker in the grassy area, which was covered with boulders and rocks and awkward things all over the place, because it's not a flat jungle bottom. It's a super precarious jungle floor, and right next to the river. So there's boulders. And I mean, it was a mess. Like, no doctor would advise being in that condition. And, but because I was forcing myself in this arena to step up to the plate, if you will, mm-hmm. I was able to make leaps of progress that my contemporaries aren't able to do, because they're padded with comfort.
Right. And
being in that level of uncomfortability and that precariousness of the terrain, gradually, which didn't seem like that long of a time, I went from wheelchair to walker to cane, to 2 canes. And my goal was, I want to walk with myself using these 2 canes to the front of the valley, which meant hiking 3 miles on canes, and then going through rivers, which are full of boulders and slippery moss-covered rocks, making my way through two rivers, crossing, through all these dirt roads that are just, I've got visions in my head that are just, they would rattle a vehicle if you were driving it in a vehicle. You would just be a bobblehead going back and forth with the terrain that you'd go through. And so 3 miles of this to the front of the valley, 1 mile across a black sand beach, which, using 2 canes and no, limited function below your knees, was extremely difficult. And then back another 2.5 miles to a waterfall. That was the goal. I wanted to walk 3 miles up, 1 mile across, 2.5 miles back, get to this waterfall, experience that for a little bit, and then make my way back. And if I could do that, I was walking my way out of this jungle valley and making my way back into society. Well, I did that. I reached that goal, and I found myself moving out of the valley, because the folks that I was caretaking for at this house prior to my injury, they gave me basically like a 2-month period to find new housing, because they're like, hey, sorry about your injury, but we have a property to run and you can't manage this place anymore. We need to get somebody else in here. I was like, all right, I got 2 months to get myself on my feet. So I dove into these practices extremely deep and extremely hard. And I just worked my tail off, and I graduated, if you will, and made myself out of that valley using my 2 canes. Well, then it wasn't a short while later, my girlfriend at the time leaves me. So there goes my caretaker. There goes my sense of feeling like I was part of a family. There goes, the sense of kind of feeling like, if you will, a man, like my ability to connect and intimate with a woman had been essentially taken away with spinal cord injury. No ability below the waist. So I wasn't able to, have sex in the same way. I wasn't able to kind of feel like a man, if you will. I wasn't putting food on the table. I wasn't bringing in cash flow. I wasn't able to intimate. My sense of masculinity had really been deteriorated, which meant my biochemistry was being taken away as well, right? There goes my testosterone levels, which are going to help fuel my ability to rehabilitate,
right.
And to grow muscle mass and build my body back up. And so biochemistry started to come into play, and relationships were starting to make their way. And it was in a short while after she left that I found myself homeless and living at beaches as a person with spinal cord injury, paralysis, having to catheter myself at these, dirty, sandy, just unsanitary conditions. And I fast forward, I was like, man, I can't live. This is no way to live. I can't continue to be a paraplegic being homeless at a beach. This is just no way to live. It might be the dream for somebody who's not a paraplegic, but I can't do this right now. And so I found myself I found myself connecting with a gentleman in the town that I live with. I'm actually looking at his property. It's right next door to where I live right now. And this gentleman is one of the most unique individuals I've ever come across. And his name was Lieutenant Colonel Jim Shannon. And he is responsible for the U.S. Army's Psychic Ops Division. And so Jim shared with me a place to live. He gave me a small, tiny apartment to live in, which was really just a closet in a bathroom on his 3-acre commune, and there'd be anywhere from 8 to 22 people living on this commune, just a bunch of transient pilgrims. And so I'd be stuck inside my little closet of a bedroom, smelling the excrement of these pilgrims as they'd come to use the community toilet. And so I was like, man, I got to get myself healed. But in this space, I was able to live on a beautiful property and work on the land, connect with the land, build my own garden where I was cultivating foods that would help my process of healing. And Jim started sharing these ideas of healing the psyche so that you can heal your body. And without going too much into that any further than what we've already shared about the necessity of diving into your psyche, Jim helped guide me through a process of unraveling the restrictions and the limitations in my psyche so that my body could continue to unfold in its healing process. And a short while later, I moved out of Jim's place and I got my own place, and I connected with an acupuncturist lady who then shared with me that, I shared with her, hey, I am still looking for a teacher. My previous Tai Chi teacher had passed. And so I was like, man, I'd really like to find a new teacher who could help me get further in my process. And she's like, well, I used to rent to this guy who would do martial arts in the courtyard here, in this kind of food forest that she had cultivated. And he's like, she was saying, I don't know if he still practices, but you could reach out to him. Well, I reached out to this guy, and he said, listen, I could show you some things, but what you really want to do is connect with my teacher. And this man doesn't teach anymore. He used to own a medical clinic here in town. He used to have a bunch of students, and he's kind of a badass, but he's shut his doors on the arts and he's not practicing anymore. And so I don't even know if he'll help you, but here's his number. And so I reached out to this guy. I shot him a text message and I said, hey, somebody gave me your number, and this is my situation. They said you might be able to help point me in the right direction. So the next day I meet up with him, or that Saturday I meet up with him at a farmer's market, and we're walking around the market, and he's telling me all these, or he's listening to me tell him all of my situation, and he's kind of just walking around and listening. He walks me back to his truck, and he says, "Why don't you come over and let's see what's going on?" And so I go over to his house, and that from that day on, we began this relationship where he started teaching me how to rehabilitate my body in the next level. And I trained with him for maybe 2-3 years. And he was just showing me this, little by little, one move here, one move there, on how to use martial arts further to heal my body. Mm. And one day he comes in, we're practicing together, and he's like, gets on the phone, and he's like, "Oh yeah," he's giving somebody directions on how to get to his house. And this van,
this is your teacher that you have now, correct?
This is my teacher that I have now, correct. And so this van pulls up, and he's like, and these 3 gentlemen come out, 2 about the age of my teacher, and 1 a little more seasoned person, maybe in his late 60s, long white beard, long white hair up in a ponytail. I'm like, who are these guys? And this older gentleman who's, still looking very strong. He's nearly 70, but he's looking like a tough dude. Definitely not a guy you would want to mess with. But he's being walked up side by side by these other strong looking dudes. I'm like, who are these guys? And my teacher introduces me to them. And he's like, these are my school brothers, and this is my teacher. And I was like, I didn't even know that this was a bigger organization. I thought it was just you and me doing this thing out here. And so he introduces me to these gentlemen. And later that night, he calls me up and he says, you really like this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I really like this stuff. He's like, well, my teacher wants me to make you an official student. Why don't you come over tomorrow and let's do this thing? And so fast forward, I'm now training martial arts, like legitimate martial arts, not just like how to heal through martial arts, but now he's teaching me, fighting styles and how to truly engage this martial truth that we were just using as medical truth. Now we're engaging it to have martial truth, which means it has a functional application in a martial setting. Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing this for a couple of years, and fast forward, he's like, why don't you come out and come to the school, to that main school? So I go out there, and holy smokes, there's this whole community of martial art and medical, masters, these amazing artists that have been cultivating and keeping secret this ancient warrior wisdom for generations and decades. And it goes way back into China. And I was absolutely blown away by the fact that this nearly extinct, this nearly extinct culture is being kept alive in a place like Tucson, Arizona. Right. And so I'm meeting with all these different teachers that have come in from across North America to train during this conference. And, still being paraplegic, still having my body frustrations. My teacher is like, oh, you kind of got this wonky situation. Your back's all tight. Why don't you come into the clinic and let me work on you? Now, my teacher's already worked on me a whole bunch. I've been working with him in his clinic in Hawaii. So we've been doing this. He had 2 clinics, shut one down, and he just kind of kept one for his really tight group of clients. And so I've been working this medicine for some time. But in this case, we walk into the clinic there at the headquarters school, and there on the table is this book, A Tooth from the Tiger's Mouth. And I says, oh, look at this book. How cool. This was one of the books that I used to heal. That's cool that we use it here at the school. He's like, use it here at the school? He's like, do you know who the tiger is that is the tooth from the tiger's mouth? I says, no. And he's, why don't you open up the book to the dedication? And I see the dedication, and there on the page is, dedicated to this person, Vince Black. I said, Vince, your teacher, Vince Black. And he says, yeah. So your teacher is Vince Black, the tiger that this book is referencing. He says, yes. He's like, this author, Tom Biggio, is the school brother to our grandmaster. I said, now how cool is that? So here I have undergone this incredible healing journey, utilizing the poultices, plasters, and exercises that are in this book. And years later, I find a teacher who is now leading me to this community of people that this medicine has stemmed from, that has made it to America from Taiwan and China through this grandmaster, Vince. I said, now how unbelievably cool and rare is this experience? And so then he walks me over and he says, our Qigong set. I say, yeah. And he says, it comes from this guy. This guy literally wrote the book on Chinese acupuncture points and meridians. And here he is. He's got a Chinese or a Qigong course that our students have been, training under the guidance of this master for, quite some time and becoming disciples of him and keeping these traditions alive. And I was just absolutely blown away at the full circle that this thing had taken me, because out of all of Hawaii, there is only one person who is teaching this type of medicine and this type of martial arts. And he happens to was living right up the road from where I was living. And he happens to have been completely retired, but he opened up his doors to teach me and to use this medicine on me. And then to find out that they've been preserving this medicine for generations, and they've been sharing this medicine on the select few who come through their doors. And then we found ourselves in China learning from some of the grandmasters over there, doing this cultural exchange, going to these amazing temples on the peaks of mountains where the emperors used to live, and just an absolute martial artist dream. And there's no way that any of this would have happened if my body and spirit had not been completely shattered. And so I just find that the process of healing is really just a process of unfolding you into this kind of divine purpose, or this greater trajectory that your spirit is trying to connect with. And I am still just absolutely blown away and infinitely grateful for that injury, because without that injury, I would not have learned the things I needed to learn. I would not have gone through the process of metamorphosis and transformation. I would not have connected with the teachers that I needed to connect with. And I would not be now in a position where I can share these things with the people that truly need it the most. People that have had their bodies taken away from them, their lives completely shattered, and their spirits in dire need of something that will allow the process of metamorphosis to continue to unfold. And none of this can be possible if we're not injured, if we don't have the humility to accept, or what Vince likes to call, investing in the loss. And it's a powerful transformation. It's a radical shift that can take place when you have compassion for all phases of life's offerings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I keep hearing over and over from you this sense of gratitude. And I think that's really important in this process, Dustin. That surrender and that gratitude.
Yeah. These are qualities of the spirit that without them, we lay victim to the traps of the mind.
Yes. Again, your story for me is extremely inspiring. I'm just, I'm blown away by all the things you had to overcome, and the wellness and the expansion that they have offered to you. It's really very beautiful. I could be here all afternoon with you. You know that, right?
Yeah, we've spent time.
We've already spent hours together talking about this, and I could spend another couple of hours.
I know it. So good talking with you.
But I know you're going to be okay. So you wrote a book, am I correct?
I did write a book. We are only days away from getting the first prints in the mail. They are already printed. They're making their way to us. And so these are my first author's prints, if you will, where I'll be sending the book to my different teachers in the organization so I can make sure that our culture and our history is accurate and the medicine is accurate that we're sharing. But yes, the book is called Paralysis Assassin because, as a warrior, I wanted to bring in that warrior medicine, right? And I wanted to write a book that gave an identity to the process. And I also wanted to give a broader term. Instead of just spinal cord injury, I wanted to share an idea that paralysis is not necessarily, it's something that's experienced in the body, but it is stemming from somewhere else. A spinal cord injury does not mean paralysis. People have had spinal cord injury. What I've discovered is people have had spinal cord injuries and not been victim to long-term paralysis, right? I've seen soccer players get paralysis and return to the field. I've seen runners get spinal cord injury I've seen soccer players get spinal cord injury and return to the field. I've seen, marathon runners and athletes get spinal cord injury and return to their playing fields. And so spinal cord injury does not necessarily mean paralysis, long-term paralysis. You might have a short-term paralysis, but the level of integration determines, and the conditions that we put upon our body are going to greatly influence and determine whether or not and how much paralysis we experience. And so I wanted to write a book that kind of spoke to a greater message, not just about spinal cord injury, but about the process of paralysis. And paralysis can happen without spinal cord injury. We can have analysis of paralysis where just this mind faculty is running so much that we're hindered, that we're limited, that we're chicken winged. We have psychosomatic trauma that holds in our body. So it doesn't necessarily mean spinal cord injury, but Paralysis Assassin is the name of the book. And yes, the subtitle or the mini intro, if you will, is Healing Spinal Cord Injury with Ancient Warrior Wisdom. So I wanted to bring this idea of ancient wisdom that has been around for, who knows how long, thousands of years, that has been cultivated since the time of the Yellow Emperor and has been refined gradually through countless physicians, and has been kept secret and held in reverence through all of this time, only getting better, only keeping what is truly applicable, what really works. That's what's great about this medicine, is it has withstood the test of time. We know in today's society about, Western medicine, and if it doesn't make the cut, it's out of there, right? It is quick to be discarded.
Right. You're talking we're talking about an evolution of
the Atkins diet that was so prevalent when I was growing up, people were raving about the Atkins diet, but now you'd find that nowhere because it didn't hold its weight.
Right.
And so this medicine has been around for so long and is continued to be shared because it's been so valuable to so many people. And this is stuff that is, it's shared in the East. You could go to China and you could get acupuncture at the hospital. You could get, there's mindfulness and meditation and these Qigong exercises and these ointments and different types of external medicine. It's available in the East, but it's not available here. our society, for some reason, has dubbed it as not worthy or invaluable. And I don't want to say that there's money influencing the other way, but there's certainly a reason that Western society has tried to keep it out. Right. And a lot of that is because it works and it doesn't keep people dependent on a system. Mm-hmm. And so one of the greater gifts of being able to write this book and share about this medicine is that it allows me the unique opportunity and a unique experience to remind folks that they have the power within themselves, that this medicine is available for everybody, and that really all it takes is a consistent practice. But if you're willing to do the work, there's no telling what level of healing you can accomplish. Right. But the system here in America doesn't want you to do that, because it means you're not going to be reliant upon them, and it means less money in being paid into the system. Right. And it's an opportunity. It's not easy. It requires a lot of hard work, and it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of radical honesty. But if you can stay consistent with a lifestyle that is congruent to what it is that you're trying to accomplish, this kind of holistic medicine can help any person experiencing a type of trauma or a type of injury. Now, maybe the medicine that heals my bones isn't necessary for a person trying to heal from, say, MS or diabetes, but there is a proper medicine, holistic medicine, for the type of injury or trauma or disability, deficiency that a person could be going through. There is some kind of medicine for everybody. And the practice really becomes finding the right medicine that will target what it is that you're ailing from. And the way that you can do that is by going through the checklist. What does my system need from my electromagnetic, psycho-spiritual, biochemical being? What is it that is deficient, and what will help nourish that deficiency? And if you can put those two things together, there's no telling what your human matrix can accomplish.
Yes. Yes. It's what am I going to do about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Yes.
That is. That is.
And I think it all comes down to that.
Yeah, that choice. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we do have a choice. And it's lovely that we have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Let's just make sure that we let people know that they do have a choice. Mm-hmm. It is a reality. It's not something out there. It is a reality. It is a way of being and shifting. Okay, Dustin, I think you said you were going to be coming to California at some point in time. Am I correct there?
I'm actually doing a full West Coast tour. We're going to go from Portland down to LA, over to Arizona, and then up into Vegas. Vegas is going to be our last stop on the journey, but we're going to be hitting all the major cities along the way, doing a book talk, typically on Thursdays, and then doing a 2-day boot camp where I'll be sharing some of these medicines, mostly the physical stuff, the exercise kind of components. We're going to have some discourses and some different fun warrior medicine we're gonna present in there. So we're gonna do a 2-day boot camp on Saturdays and Sundays for folks. I'm trying to target folks with spinal cord injury, because this kind of medicine is completely foreign to this industry of injury.
Okay, so with spinal cord injury, could that include somebody that has, for example, a stroke? That isn't necessarily a spinal cord, but it affects the spinal cord.
Yes. So, a spinal cord injury could be a pathogen. It could be a venom. It could be an injury, a stroke. Sometimes there's just fluke things that happen that the nervous system shuts down with. Right. And so with the talk, I'm going to share primarily about the book and my story, kind of like what we did here, and answer, do some Q&A. And then in the boot camp, we're going to get dirty. It's going to be a muddy mess. I'm going to have folks crawling around in the grass. We're going to be sweating our tails off.
So you're going to be putting them to practice.
We're going to be going to practice. Day 1 and day 2 are going to be a little different. Day 1 is going to be more physical. It's going to be a little bit more intense. But it's to wake up not only the body, but the person inside the body. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be some discourse on after lunch that we'll share, where it's going to be a little bit easier. And then day 2 is going to be more yin exercises. It's going to be more recovery, how to set yourself up with some home care type stuff. Yes. And we're going to go through a rehabilitation kit, what I call the Assassin's Toolkit, where I'm going to show them different tools that they can use on their body, different things that they can implement that will assist their body in the process of rehabilitation. Okay. And so basically what we're talking about is a 2-day workshop where folks are going to get a whole lot of home care practices that they can put into use right now. They're going to get some ideas that will help them to cultivate and carve out a home practice that is most appropriate for them. Okay. All righty. So Dustin, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you? Do you have a Facebook page? Absolutely. Yeah, I'm on Facebook. You can reach me at Dustin Meza. That's Meza. You can reach me on Instagram at Paralysis_Assassin. You can reach me, go to my website for more information. That's www.dustinmeza.life. And those are the primary ways folks can begin to connect with me. Oh, I also have a YouTube where I've started to share some videos, Dustin Meza. And you can go to YouTube there, type that in, and you'll see the arena that I rehabilitated in. I actually take you down into the jungle. I show you the absolutely outrageous, drive down into the valley. I show you the cabin that I lived at that has no running water and no electricity. And obviously no healthcare professionals coming down to assist me down there. And then I start to share some little bits about intro to spinal cord injury, intro to some of the healing practices. And I'm just starting to get some of the actual physical practices that folks can do on their body. But, first and foremost, I wanted to get people connected with me, with what it is that we're doing, and then start to share some ideas that are kind of preliminary considerations necessary to make the shift. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yes. Okay, so that Dustin Meza, but it's Meza. Correct. Okay. So I will put the information down so that they can see it in writing as well. But Dustin, let us know when you're coming, or let me know when you're coming. Sure will. Thank you. I would like to get the word out for you here. And I so appreciate your process. I appreciate your grit. I appreciate your faith in you and in this universe that supports you so well. Thank you. Yeah, I always get so elevated when you and I talk. I know. I feel like I just get so charged when we connect. I know. I totally agree. And so we will end here because, we have to, but maybe we'll do a part 2 here in the future so that we can talk a little bit more about the actual goings on. But thank you for being with me. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you so much. What a fun experience. I really enjoy connecting with you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you everybody for watching. And oh my gosh, don't forget to look him up because I think it would be of huge value for anybody that's going through anything relating to their spine. And like I said, it may not be spine, it might not be an accident, it could be a stroke or anything like that,
where it would help. So love you all, and thank you. Thank you for being with us. And thank you, Dustin, for being with us.
Thanks so much, Margie. Look forward to seeing you in California.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. Take good care.